There comes a point in life when you realize not everyone who stands beside you is standing for you. Some people smile at you while secretly hoping you fail. Some pretend to care, only to use your kindness as a weapon against you. And some, without saying a word, slowly chip away at your confidence until you start questioning your own worth. You start to feel it, that uneasy energy when someone's words sound supportive, but their tone feels sharp. That moment when you leave a conversation more drained than uplifted. You try to tell yourself, maybe it's just me, but deep down, you know it's not. You know something's off. That's when you need to stop and ask yourself, what am I allowing? What am I tolerating just because I don't want to lose people? See, the truth is, every time you stay silent in the face of disrespect, you teach the world how to treat you. Every time you excuse someone's toxic behavior, you tell them it's okay to cross your boundaries, but it's not okay. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. Because power doesn't come from being liked. It comes from knowing when to walk away. In this video, we're going to talk about the 5 behaviors you should never, and I mean never, tolerate from anyone. These are the subtle things people do that slowly drain your peace, dim your light, and make you doubt your value. But once you learn to recognize them, you'll never fall for them again. You'll begin to move differently, calmer, stronger, untouchable. Because when you stop tolerating the wrong behaviors, you make space for the right people, the right energy, and the right life. So let's talk about it, the 5 behaviors you should never tolerate from anyone. It often starts small. Someone makes a joke about you in front of others. Everyone laughs. You force a smile because you don't want to seem too sensitive. You tell yourself it's harmless. But that uneasy feeling stays. Something inside you tightens. And you can't shake the thought that what they said wasn't really funny. It was personal. That's how disrespect usually enters your life. Not through insults or arguments, but through jokes disguised as humor. When people disguise disrespect as a joke, they're testing your boundaries. They want to see how much of yourself you're willing to sacrifice for peace. They'll say something cutting about your looks, your intelligence, your goals, or your past. And when you don't react, it sends a message. You can get away with this. The moment you laugh along just to keep things comfortable, you've handed them silent permission to keep doing it. Humor is supposed to connect people, not tear them apart. When someone uses it to humiliate or belittle you, that's not humor, it's control. They're using laughter to shift the balance of power in the room. Notice how the joke is always at your expense, how the laughter always leaves you feeling smaller. That's not comedy, that's domination. And here's the truth, people who use jokes to insult others are not just joking, they're revealing who they really are. They're showing you how they see you, less than, disposable, someone whose dignity can be sacrificed for entertainment. That's not love. That's not friendship. That's not connection. That's manipulation wrapped in a smile. You might think maybe they didn't mean it like that. But intent doesn't erase impact. Even if they claim they were just playing, the effect on you is real. You feel disrespected, unseen, small. That's all the evidence you need. You don't have to justify your boundaries or explain your feelings to someone who consistently crosses them. When you allow disrespectful jokes, you slowly start to lose confidence in your own voice. You begin to censor yourself. You start shrinking, afraid that speaking up will make you look weak or overly sensitive. But silence doesn't protect you, it only protects the one who disrespected you. And soon, your silence becomes the permission they need to continue. You deserve relationships where you don't have to laugh to survive. You deserve people who speak to you with kindness even when they're teasing, who know how to be funny without being cruel. But you won't find that until you decide you're no longer available for cheap shots, masked as humor. Setting a boundary doesn't mean you're being dramatic, it means you value yourself enough to demand respect. The next time someone makes a joke that crosses the line, stop them. You don't have to argue or explain. You can simply say, "That's not funny to me," or "I don't appreciate that." Watch how they respond because their reaction will tell you everything. The right person will respect it. The wrong one will call you too sensitive. That's how you know who belongs in your space. People who truly care about you don't laugh at your expense. They protect you when others try to. They make you feel safe, not self-conscious. Understand this. Disrespect rarely starts loud. It begins quietly. It hides behind sarcasm, just kidding, or, I didn't mean it. But every small moment adds up. And before you know it, you're surrounded by people who constantly make you question your worth, all under the pretense of fun. You have to train yourself to recognize the difference between humor that uplifts and humor that degrades. The first makes everyone in the room feel lighter. The second makes someone feel less. And if you're the target, you have the right to call it out or walk away. That's not weakness. That's power. Power is not in shouting or arguing. It's in being so certain of your worth that you don't entertain disrespect, even when it's dressed up as laughter. It's in walking away from people who find amusement in your pain. Remember, people who love you will never use you as a punchline. They'll protect your name in rooms you're not in. They'll uplift your spirit instead of chipping away at it. The ones who mock you when you're vulnerable, who laugh when you fall, who use your insecurities as comedy material. Those are not your people. They are mirrors reflecting what you no longer need in your life. And when you finally start removing those people, something shifts inside you. You start to feel lighter, freer. You laugh again. But this time, it's genuine. Because laughter should come from joy, not from surviving humiliation. The next time someone jokes at your expense, pause before you react. Ask yourself, if I didn't laugh, would they still find it funny? Because true humor doesn't depend on someone else's discomfort. The moment you stop tolerating disrespect disguised as jokes, you reclaim your voice. You remind yourself that you're not here to be anyone's entertainment. You're here to live with dignity, with confidence, and with self-respect. So the next time someone tries to humiliate you under the mask of humor, look them in the eye and remember this. You don't have to laugh to be polite. You don't have to stay to prove your strength. You don't have to explain why you deserve respect. Walk away if you must, but never shrink to fit someone's version of what's funny. Because when you stop tolerating those jokes, you're not just protecting your pride, you're protecting your peace. And nothing, absolutely nothing, is worth losing that for. Manipulation through guilt is one of the most subtle and emotionally draining forms of control. It doesn't always come from people who appear cruel or aggressive. Often it comes from those who seem gentle, caring, or even wounded. It sounds like concern, but it feels like pressure. It looks like love, but it's really control wearing a mask. You'll hear it in phrases like, "After all I've done for you," or "You don't care about me anymore," or "I guess you're too busy for people who love you." They twist your compassion into a weapon, making you feel responsible for their emotions, their disappointments, and their unhappiness. The more you try to make them happy, the more they pull on that guilt, until you're exhausted, drained, and unsure where their feelings end and yours begin. That's how guilt manipulation works. It blurs boundaries. It makes you believe that saying no is an act of betrayal, that choosing yourself is selfish, and that prioritizing your peace means abandoning others. You begin to confuse guilt with empathy, and that confusion keeps you trapped. Manipulators who use guilt know exactly what they're doing. They study your heart, your kindness, your desire to make things right. They know you care deeply, so they use that against you. They turn your strengths, your empathy, your loyalty into weaknesses. Every time you try to set a boundary, they pull on those invisible emotional strings. "I thought you were different. You've changed. I guess I don't matter to you anymore." It's not love. It's psychological control. And here's the harsh truth. Guilt manipulators rarely want a solution. They don't actually want understanding or resolution. They want submission. They want you to feel bad enough to do what they want. That's why no matter how much you give, it's never enough. You can spend hours explaining yourself, apologizing, or trying to make things right, And yet they'll always find a way to turn it back on you. Because their goal isn't clarity, it's control. You can recognize manipulation through guilt by how it makes you feel. Real love gives you space to breathe. Manipulation makes you feel like you're suffocating. After an interaction with a manipulative person, you don't feel heard. You feel drained, anxious, and ashamed. You replay the conversation in your head, wondering if you really were the problem, questioning your own judgment. That's not normal. That's emotional entrapment. Healthy relationships allow honesty without punishment. You should be able to say no without being made to feel like a villain. You should be able to disappoint someone without being treated like you've committed a crime. People who truly care about you respect your choices, even when they don't benefit from them. They don't hold your empathy hostage to get what they want. The reason guilt manipulation hurts so deeply is because it comes from people we care about. A parent, a partner, a friend, a mentor, someone whose opinion matters to us. That's why it works. It's not a stranger's voice telling you you're selfish. It's someone you love. That makes it harder to walk away, harder to see clearly. But love that demands guilt isn't love. It's dependency. You are not responsible for managing another person's emotions. Let that sink in. You are responsible for kindness, honesty, and respect, but not for how someone reacts when you set a boundary. If your decision to protect your peace offends someone, that's not your problem to fix. That's their lesson to learn. One of the most powerful things you can do when dealing with guilt manipulation is to stay calm and stay firm. Don't explain too much. Don't defend your boundary endlessly. The more you talk, the more they twist your words. Keep it simple. I'm sorry you feel that way, but my decision stands. That one sentence disarms manipulation because it doesn't give it oxygen. At first, they might push harder. They'll guilt trip you more. They'll accuse you of being cold, ungrateful, or heartless. That's because your new boundary threatens their control. But stay consistent. Over time, the dynamic shifts. They either learn that guilt no longer works on you, or they drift away because they can no longer feed off your empathy. Either way, you win. When you stop responding to guilt manipulation, you take your power back. You stop living in emotional debt, always trying to make up for something you didn't do wrong. You stop apologizing for your needs. And most importantly, you stop confusing love with sacrifice. You'll notice a calm that comes when you no longer let people pull your strings. You start doing things because you want to, not because you have to. You start recognizing who actually appreciates you versus who just benefits from your compliance. And that clarity is freedom. The people who genuinely love you will never want to control you through guilt. They'll want to understand you. They'll ask questions, not make accusations. They'll listen when you say you need space. They'll want you to be happy even when that happiness doesn't revolve around them. That's love. That's what safety feels like. Manipulation through guilt teaches you one of life's most valuable lessons. You can't heal people who enjoy making you feel guilty. Some people feed off control. They need to make others feel small, to feel significant. You can't save them by giving more of yourself. The only way to protect your peace is to stop engaging in the game entirely. You have every right to walk away from guilt. You have every right to protect your emotional energy. You have every right to say no without apology. You don't owe anyone your constant availability. You don't owe anyone your exhaustion. You owe yourself peace, and that means learning to recognize when guilt is being used as a leash. True strength is not in how much you can endure. It's in how much you can refuse to tolerate. The day you stop letting guilt manipulate you is the day you start living from self-respect instead of fear. And that kind of freedom is something no one can ever take from you again. So the next time someone tries to make you feel guilty for protecting your boundaries, remember this: you are not being cruel. You're being clear. You are not walking away from love. You're walking away from control. And the peace you'll feel afterward will remind you why you should have done it sooner. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that comes from being around people who carry a dark cloud wherever they go. You know the type, Nothing is ever good enough. No situation is ever hopeful, and no one ever measures up. You can share the best news of your life, and somehow they'll find a way to point out what could go wrong. You walk away from them feeling smaller, doubting your excitement, questioning your progress. That's the quiet damage of constant negativity and criticism. It seeps into your mind slowly until you begin to see yourself through their cynical lens. People who live in constant negativity often wear it like armor. They've been disappointed, hurt, or overlooked so many times that they build their worldview around the expectation that everything will fail. But instead of healing that pain, they project it onto everyone else. Their criticism isn't always about you, it's about their own limitations. Yet when you're the one constantly listening to it, it starts to feel personal. You could be chasing a dream, working on a project, or making a small step toward change, and they'll say things like, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Or "Don't get your hopes up." Or "People fail at that all the time." And the more you hear it, the more you start to internalize it. Suddenly their voice becomes your inner voice. You start hesitating, second-guessing yourself, and giving up before you even try. That's how negativity spreads. It doesn't shout, it whispers until you believe it's your own thought. What makes constant negativity so toxic is that it drains your energy without ever offering solutions. Constructive feedback is healthy. It helps you grow, but destructive criticism only exists to tear down. The difference is intent. One aims to help you improve, the other wants to keep you small. You'll know which is which by how you feel afterward. If you feel motivated and clear, that's feedback. If you feel defeated and uncertain, that's criticism. Negative people thrive in environments where they can influence others to join their pessimism. Misery loves company, and negativity loves validation. When you refuse to join their complaining, they'll often turn on you, calling you naive or unrealistic. They'll say things like, "You think life is that simple?" Or "You just don't get how the real world works." But that's not wisdom talking, it's bitterness. They've confused cynicism for intelligence. You have to be very intentional about what energy you allow around you, because the more time you spend with critical people, the more you begin to filter your dreams through their fears. You start shrinking your goals, so you won't be judged. You stop sharing your wins because you know they'll downplay them. You even start apologizing for being happy. That's how negativity poisons joy. It convinces you that peace should be earned, not felt. One of the hardest lessons in life is realizing that not everyone is capable of celebrating you. Some people feel threatened by your growth because it exposes their stagnation. Your light reminds them of what they've dimmed in themselves. So, instead of being inspired, they criticize. Instead of supporting you, they undermine you. They'll say you're lucky, not hardworking. They'll call you arrogant for being confident. And if you're not careful, their voices can make you question whether you deserve the good things happening to you. But here's the truth, you do. You've earned your progress, your joy, your peace. You don't need anyone's permission to feel proud of it. The moment you stop needing validation from negative people, you start to feel lighter. You begin to understand that their criticism says more about them than it ever will about you. Negativity and constant criticism are energy thieves. They don't just take your joy, they take your focus, your drive, your sense of self-worth. And sometimes the people who drain you most are the ones closest to you. They might be family, friends, or even colleagues who constantly complain, gossip, or point out flaws. It's painful to distance yourself from them, but it's even more painful to lose yourself by staying. You don't have to fight their negativity, you just have to stop feeding it. When they start complaining, don't engage. When they start criticizing, don't defend. Silence can be the strongest response. It's not your job to fix their outlook. You can care for someone without absorbing their darkness. You can love someone and still choose not to carry their bitterness. When you stop entertaining constant negativity, you'll notice something powerful. You start to think clearly again. You start believing in your ideas, trusting your instincts, and embracing your path without fear. You begin to attract people who match your energy, those who build instead of break, those who challenge instead of criticize, those who see possibilities where others see problems. Protecting your peace doesn't mean you're ignoring reality. It means you're choosing not to live in fear. You're choosing to see what could go right instead of always expecting what could go wrong. You're choosing hope over helplessness. That's not delusion, that's strength. It takes courage to set emotional boundaries with negative people because they'll make you feel guilty for it. They'll accuse you of being distant or selfish. Well, you're not being selfish, you're being self-aware. You're choosing to preserve your mental and emotional energy for growth, not decay, because you can't bloom in a garden that only knows how to complain about the rain. At some point, you have to decide that your peace matters more than their pessimism. You have to stop explaining your joy to people committed to their misery. Let them believe what they want. You have a life to live, and you can't live it fully while walking on eggshells around other people's negativity. The truth is, people who constantly criticize others are fighting their own silent battles. They project their fears because they can't confront them. But you don't have to join them in that darkness. You can choose to rise above it. You can choose to stay kind, stay hopeful, and stay grounded without becoming their emotional sponge. Every time you walk away from negativity, you choose peace. Every time you refuse to engage in endless criticism, you choose clarity. Every time you silence that external noise, you give yourself permission to hear your own voice again. So the next time someone tries to pour their darkness into your light, remember, it's not your job to carry what's breaking them. Protect your energy because it's the fuel that powers your purpose. And when you learn to guard it fiercely, you'll find that your confidence, creativity, and calmness begin to grow again because you're finally surrounded by light that matches your own. There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize they've been giving far more than they've been receiving. You notice it not because of one big event, but through a slow accumulation of small disappointments. The unanswered messages, the one-sided check-ins, the endless emotional labor that never seems to be returned. You start to see it clearly. You've been in a relationship, but you've been the only one showing up for it. A one-sided relationship isn't always obvious at first. It can feel like genuine care, like love, like loyalty. You tell yourself that they're just busy, or distracted, or going through something. You make excuses for their absence while continuing to show up. But deep down, you feel it, the imbalance. You feel how heavy it's become to carry something that's supposed to be mutual. The truth is, relationships, whether friendships, family bonds, or romantic connections, require effort from both sides. They thrive when there's reciprocity, when both people invest time, attention, and care. But when you find yourself always being the one to reach out, to apologize, to plan, to listen, you start to lose more than energy. You start to lose yourself, because love, when it becomes one-sided, slowly erodes your self-worth. At first you tell yourself you're just being patient, that love means understanding and giving without keeping score. And while that's true to a degree, there's a difference between compassion and self-sacrifice. When giving starts to hurt, when kindness feels like a burden, when understanding feels like silence, something's wrong. You should never have to beg for the bare minimum. One-sided relationships often survive because of hope. You hold on to the memory of who the person used to be, or who you wish they could become. You replay the good moments, convincing yourself they mean more than they do. You believe that if you just love harder, they'll finally see your worth. But love doesn't fix imbalance, boundaries do. And that's the part many struggle with. The realization that no matter how much you give, you can't make someone reciprocate. You can't make them care or show up or change. You can't force effort, attention, or respect. Those things have to come willingly. And when they don't, the healthiest thing you can do is stop trying to carry both halves of the relationship on your own. People will always show you how much they value you, not through words, but through consistency. If someone truly cares, you won't have to chase their attention or beg for their time. They'll make space for you, they'll reach out, they'll reciprocate your energy without needing to be reminded. But if you're always the one initiating, always the one making the effort, you're not in a relationship, you're in emotional labor disguised as love. The dangerous thing about one-sided relationships is how they make you doubt yourself. You start to wonder if you're asking for too much, if you're too emotional, too needy, too sensitive. But the truth is, You're not asking for too much, you're just asking the wrong person. Because the right people will never make you feel guilty for wanting mutual effort. When someone truly values you, they'll match your energy. They'll notice your silence and ask if you're okay. They'll celebrate your wins and stand by you through losses. But when you're dealing with a one-sided connection, they'll only show up when it's convenient, when they need something or when it benefits them. And that realization hurts. It cuts deep because it forces you to admit that your loyalty has been taken for granted. But here's the liberating truth. Walking away from one-sided relationships doesn't mean you've failed. It means you've finally learned your worth. You've realized that you deserve relationships that feel balanced, peaceful, and nourishing. You deserve to be chosen, not just tolerated. When you start pulling back your energy from those who don't reciprocate, something powerful happens. You begin to heal. You stop over-explaining, over-apologizing, and overcompensating. You stop carrying conversations on your back. You stop pouring love into empty hands. You begin to redirect that energy inward, toward your own growth, your own peace, your own joy. You learn that real love doesn't demand exhaustion. It doesn't require you to prove your value through constant effort. It flows freely, naturally, without force. You start to see the beauty in mutuality, where love is given and returned, where both people feel seen, appreciated, and safe. And maybe the hardest part is accepting that some people were only meant to teach you this lesson. They were never meant to stay. Their absence, as painful as it is, becomes the space where self-respect is born. You start understanding that it's better to be alone than to be half-loved. It's better to walk away from something unbalanced than to lose yourself trying to fix what's not yours to fix. When you stop investing in one-sided relationships, you send a message to the universe. I'm ready for better. And better comes. Slowly, but surely, you begin to attract people who match your energy, who love with presence, who listen with intent, who reciprocate without hesitation. The kind of relationships that don't drain you, but restore you. You deserve people who notice when you've gone quiet, who check in, not because they have to, but because they care. People who don't make you question your worth every time you reach out. People who give as much as they receive, not perfectly, but willingly. So if you find yourself in a one-sided relationship today, let this be your reminder. You are not hard to love. You are not asking for too much. You're just asking the wrong person to meet you halfway. Stop pouring your heart into people who only sip from your soul when they're thirsty. Stop fighting for someone who wouldn't even lift a hand for you. Your energy is precious, your time is sacred, and your love is a gift. Give it to those who treat it like one. Because when you finally stop chasing people who don't care, you make room for those who do. And that's when you'll discover what real connection feels like. Not the kind that drains you, but the kind that fills you. One day, you'll look back and thank yourself for walking away. You'll realize that losing people who never showed up for you wasn't a loss at all. It was freedom. Freedom to rebuild, to reconnect, to rediscover the kind of love that doesn't have to be begged for. The kind of love that meets you right where you are and stays. There's a quiet power that comes from knowing your limits, knowing what you will and will not accept, what brings you peace and what destroys it. Boundaries are not walls. They're the invisible lines that protect your dignity, your energy, and your sanity. They're how you communicate to the world. This is where my peace begins and your chaos ends. But when someone repeatedly disrespects those boundaries, what they're really telling you is that your well-being doesn't matter to them. And that truth, though painful, is necessary to face. Disrespecting boundaries rarely starts as something obvious. It begins subtly. A friend who dismisses your no as if you're joking. A partner who laughs when you ask for space. A family member who uses guilt or love to overstep your privacy. At first you might brush it off thinking, they didn't mean it that way. But the pattern continues, and with every small violation, your sense of safety starts to shrink. People who disrespect your boundaries are not always malicious. Sometimes they're simply used to taking from you because you've always given. They're comfortable with your compliance, with the version of you that sacrifices peace for approval. And when you finally start saying no, when you begin enforcing what's acceptable, they don't see it as you protecting yourself. They see it as you rejecting them. That's because they were never taught to see your boundaries as valid, only as obstacles to their comfort. But make no mistake, your boundaries are not up for negotiation. They are the foundation of self-respect. Every time you let someone cross them, you send a silent message. My comfort doesn't matter. Yours does. And over time, that silence turns into resentment, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. You start feeling like you're constantly walking on eggshells trying to balance your needs with everyone else's demands. It's easy to feel guilty for enforcing boundaries, especially if you've been raised to believe that saying no is selfish or rude. But boundaries aren't selfish. They're necessary. They teach others how to treat you. But more importantly, they teach you how to honor yourself. Saying no to something that drains you is really saying yes to peace, rest, and clarity. You'll notice that the people who truly love and respect you won't take offense when you draw boundaries. They'll understand that your limits aren't a rejection. They're a form of honesty. But the ones who benefit from your lack of boundaries will push back. They'll call you difficult, cold, or changed. That's how you know your boundary is working. It's exposing who values your well-being and who only values your compliance. When someone disrespects your boundaries repeatedly, it's not a misunderstanding, it's a choice. Because the first time someone crosses the line, it could be ignorance. The second time might be carelessness. But the third time, that's disrespect. That's someone testing how much they can take before you finally break. And if you keep forgiving without consequence, they'll learn that your boundaries are flexible, that your no really means maybe. You have to stop negotiating with people who benefit from disrespecting you. You don't need to justify why you're setting a boundary. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting your peace. The more you explain, the more you give them space to debate your right to peace, and that's not up for discussion. Boundaries are a filter, not a fence. They don't block people out. They reveal who's willing to respect the space you need. Healthy people will appreciate that honesty because it builds trust. Toxic people will resent it because it limits their control. That's why enforcing boundaries feels uncomfortable at first. It shakes the dynamic. It forces you to stop overextending, to stop pleasing, to stop apologizing for taking up space. When you begin living with clear boundaries, your life changes. The noise quiets, the stress lessens. You start to feel grounded in your decisions. You no longer say yes out of fear of losing people. You say yes because you genuinely want to. And that shift changes everything. It turns your relationships from draining to nourishing, from conditional to authentic. Still, maintaining boundaries takes courage. There will be moments when you'll doubt yourself, wondering if you're being too harsh. There will be people who will try to make you feel guilty for choosing yourself. But guilt is the first emotion that surfaces when you start to unlearn people-pleasing. It's a sign that you're doing something right, because growth often feels uncomfortable when you've been conditioned to put others first. Think about how many times you've said yes when your heart was screaming no. How many times you've let someone talk over you, use you, drain you, just to keep the peace. But what kind of peace is that? If it costs you your joy, the peace that comes from avoiding conflict isn't peace at all. It's quiet suffering. And that kind of silence eats away at you. Oh, the truth is, not everyone deserves access to every part of you. Some people should only get limited access to your time, your energy, your emotions. That doesn't make you cruel. It makes you wise. You have the right to decide who gets close and who doesn't. You have the right to walk away from anyone who continuously crosses lines after you've clearly set them. Boundaries aren't about control. They're about clarity. They're about saying, I can love you and still say no. I can care for you and still need space. I can be kind without being available all the time. You're not rejecting people. You're simply protecting the version of yourself that finally learned self-worth. And that's the beauty of boundaries. They teach you to choose peace over approval. They help you see that love without respect isn't love. It's attachment. Any relationship that punishes you for having boundaries is one that thrives on power, not partnership. Real love will never require you to betray yourself to keep it. So the next time someone crosses your line and tells you you're being too sensitive or too distant, remember this: their discomfort doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're no longer easy to take advantage of. That's growth. That's maturity. That's self-respect. Protect your boundaries like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. Your peace, your confidence, and your emotional stability all flow from that sacred space between what you allow and what you don't. Don't let anyone step inside it without permission, because once you master the art of protecting your peace, you'll never again apologize for who you are or what you need. You'll realize that boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself whole. And wholeness is the greatest form of freedom you'll ever experience. At some point in your life, you have to decide that your peace, your dignity, and your self-worth are not up for negotiation. You have to stop explaining why you deserve respect, stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable, and stop tolerating behaviors that drain your spirit. The moment you decide that enough is enough, that's the moment you reclaim your power. Every time you allow someone to cross your boundaries, manipulate your emotions, or disrespect your worth, you're teaching them how little they have to give to keep you. But when you finally stand up for yourself, calmly, firmly, unapologetically, you teach them something different. You teach them that you are not desperate for love, attention, or approval. You teach them that peace is your priority, and that anyone who disturbs it loses the privilege of access. Remember this: self-respect isn't arrogance, it's alignment. When you stop tolerating what breaks you, you make space for what builds you. You start attracting people who value your honesty, your time, your energy. The world starts to mirror how you treat yourself. If you treat yourself as valuable, others will too. The truth is, you don't owe anyone endless chances. You don't owe anyone access to your life just because they've been in it for a long time. Some people are meant to be lessons, not lifetimes. And the greatest lesson you'll ever learn is that love without respect is not love, it's control. So choose yourself. Choose peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, respect over attachment. Walk away from anyone who makes you question your worth, and never apologize for protecting your energy. You are not hard to love, you're just unwilling to be mistreated. And that's your power. Because the day you stop tolerating what's toxic is the day you start living in your truth, and that truth will set you free. Not from people, but from the version of yourself that thought you had to accept less than you deserve just to be loved. Stand tall, be kind, but unshakable, compassionate, but clear, loving, but with limits. The world will respect you the way you teach it to. Never forget, your boundaries are not a sign of weakness. They are the proof that you've finally learned how to love yourself the right way.